And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts. Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Joe Soro is probably hanging around somewhere. He is the man behind Simblades with a Y.com. Hopefully, this won't be his last day as a part of what we're doing at the Lakers Fast Break, but I have a feeling it might be. At least what he says, if what he says is true. We'll go ahead and support him at Simblades with a Y.com. Also, as well, of course, go ahead and make sure you check out Stone Hansen's at report_court and what the guys are saying at Upside Swings, NBA Draft Podcast. John Costa's Clutch Talk and Lakers Corner, the Legend 350 on YouTube, all these great places to go. The Lakerholics, Jamie Sweet, and Laker Tom, Lakerholics.com. All these great places. Empire Jeff TV, of course, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Yo, Lakers in 5, John McKaylian channel. All these great places are needing you to like and subscribe, but we also need you to like and subscribe as well. So please do so by going ahead today and hitting that like button, the subscribe button, and doing whatever you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Joe Soro, of course, chiming in already in the chat. Darth Dringer, aka Cool Bro, what's going on, my friend? It is the Lakers. First round done. The euphoria of seeing the Lakers plastered all over the place. Hundreds of videos out now saying that the Lakers got the steal of the draft. A plus, A plus, A plus from analysts all over the place. But I need to get my own analyst in here. The guy who is our expert on the NBA draft. It is, of course, the guy from the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast and at report_court on Twitter. Very active, like I just told him over the past few days. It is Stone Hansen. Stone, great to have you here. Anxiously awaiting that pick in the final moments you were, according to Twitter. And then it came to fruition that the Lakers drafted and made a, what most are seemingly saying, and what I think as well, is actually a smart choice this year by Rob Pelinka in Dalton Knecht.
Yeah, I was definitely sweating it out. There are a good handful of guys I liked that are still on the board, and I was very nervous that the Lakers were going to go with one of Jacoby Walter or Yves Missy, players I do not have any interest in for the Lakers. But thankfully they didn't. They took Knecht. Obviously coming out of Tennessee. It was meant to be. I moved from Tennessee or from LA to Tennessee, and he's going from Tennessee to LA. But it's a really good pick. I thought definitely made up for the JHS last year, or maybe not made up for it, but sort of helped me not to fully disengage with this team if they would have taken somebody else I liked back to back. But it was a good pick, and I'm excited to see what it can do for us.
Absolutely. So, for people out there that may not be as up to date on Dalton Knecht, 4-year player, actually a 5th-year senior, he was a guy that averaged over 20 points a game. I think had 5 games over 30 points, maybe actually 7 games over 30 points this year in college. Actually finished off his career with a 35-point game as well. This is a guy who started out, didn't get an offer in Division One, went up from the junior college ranks, went to Northern Colorado, and finally played his final year in Tennessee. Tell us about the development that he's had over the course of the years and why he is now thought of in such good realms as a good pick for 17.
Yeah, he's somebody that has worked his way to where he's gotten. He at one point did have offers, D1 offers, but academically wasn't able to meet the standards.
Okay, because he phrased it differently. So okay. All right.
Yeah, but he worked on that and worked hard to bring up his grades and everything, and was able to eventually get to Tennessee. This is a guy that is a really solid shooter. People, I think, overuse the term elite. I don't think he's elite in the way that other guys in this class might be, but I think he's a very, very good shooter. He's very uh, versatile in the way that he can shoot. He's very strong in his core, so he has core contortion that allows him to come off of curls, pin downs, and screens. Has some movement equity. He's a pretty solid athlete. I wouldn't say a great athlete, but definitely above average, I would say. And that allows for him to be a 3-level scorer. He's comfortable getting decent verticality in the mid range for pull ups. Can get around the rim and generate a lot of power from his legs, especially off of 1 foot when he's trying to finish. Um, the touch is good, not excellent from around the rim. I think that he's in the role that he played at Tennessee. It definitely, I think, sort of clarified that you don't want him initiating a ton. He's not somebody that's gonna come from a standstill and just take someone to the rim because the handle's not quite quick enough. And he's not a great decision, or not that he's not a bad decision maker, but he takes a little while to see what he wants to do with the ball in his hands if he has it for an extended amount of time. So I think he's going to be definitely more of an off-ball player, but can really provide a lot of value in that. And then defensively, definitely has some warts in terms of just not being able to stay in front of guys a ton. I do think he can work. It's just going to take certain matchups to really get the most out of him. Um, but I think that overall, this was a really good pick. He's still not the top pick, or probably the top 1 or 2 picks I would have taken here. I think I would have rather gone with Collier or Holmes, but he is still a really good pick, which obviously makes a difference when you're talking about how things went last year. So I really do like it, and I'm really happy that the Lakers avoided my do not draft list.
Yes, there you go. Absolutely. Once again, it is Stone Hansen. Please go ahead and support him today at report_court by following him there, and also the Upside Swings NBA Draft podcast. I do want to mention that his defense, I think those some of the things that were cited in regards to the possibility he may not be able to defend, or an average defender, I saw quite a bit as well in the notes that were passed along. I saw him again. Nothing stood out as far as defenders concerned, but it didn't look like he was a turnstile either. Your thoughts on if he can go ahead and be able to defend twos and threes, or which position, the shooting guard or the small forward position, even though this is becoming more positionless all the time in the NBA, which would be his better position to be able to guard in the NBA?
Yeah, I definitely think he's more of a 3 or a wing for me. I think that he's going to struggle against quicker guards, um, but I think he's going to be decent against wings. I think that a lot of what comes with him defensively is that he's not playmaking by any means. He's not going to be someone that's getting a lot of steals or blocks on that end of the court. That's just not really who he is. He can hold his own against wings, but I think some of the defensive concerns also stem from the fact that he was just an insane amount of usage, and how much they ran their offense through him at Tennessee. So part of it might have been fatigue because he's used so heavily offensively for them. Um, and I think that he can work defensively, but I don't think he's ever going to be a positive defensively. I think he can be a neutral on that end of the court without being a real negative. But I don't ever really see him being any sort of positive on that end.
You don't see him being in the vein of, let's say, like a Clay Thompson
No.
for that example. Okay. Okay. I just athletically or other reasons why, just a defensive aptitude, just say at best, like you said, it's just something that he's not going to be a negative. It's just something that he's not going to really stand out in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and he could be a negative. Like I think that that's definitely in play too. But I think at best he would be sort of a neutral defender.
Okay.
Who's Yeah. I don't really see like I don't think you're really having plays where you're sticking Dalton Knecht to lock somebody down at any given sequence or possession, and he's not really going to be playmaking off the ball to get a bunch of steals. Unless, I mean, maybe JJ is just a really good coach who can scheme that out of him. But I think for the most part that he's just not someone I view as being a good defender. But what he does bring offensively checks a lot of boxes for what we need, especially because he's not a shoot only player. He is somebody that can do things at every level on the court.
Well, scheming is something or JJ Redick has already done, because I know Rob Pelinka remarked that JJ was already drafting up plays for Dalton Knecht, which is kind of cute. And oh, look at him. He's already drafting up plays for Dalton Knecht. Oh, that's so cool. But be that as it may, Dalton Knecht is the first pick of the Los Angeles Lakers, which obviously a lot of people are giving praise to. I think, again, it seems to be that the Lakers are thinking smart. This is a win now move, if I've seen the Lakers do, in order to the fact that you have to go ahead and say that this is a move that, because of his age, which is also one of the reasons why he dropped in the draft, because he's 23 years old. You have to assume, Stone, that they are picking him with the intention of him starting him right away, understanding that his ceiling may not be as high as some of the other prospects out there, but the results may come a lot sooner.
Maybe. I don't think that is the best way for a team to draft. I've been very against teams looking at drafting guys in their first year and what they can give them immediately as a reason to draft a player. I think that that's short-sighted and leaving value on the table long term. But I mean, when I think he is still providing value in his rookie year, definitely more so than JHS or Christie, I think. And I'm not sure that was their intended move going into it. There's actually a list, I don't know if you saw it in the LA Times, of sort of players that the Lakers were considering at that pick. They had Tristan Da Silva, Jacoby Walter, Eve Missy, and Jalen Tyson sort of on their board as well. They didn't expect Connect to fall that far. But when you look at that list of names, it sort of is a mixed bag of older guys and guys that still are fairly young and need quite a bit of development. So I don't know if they had like a real intended goal of, win now, quote unquote, versus potential type of picks. I think they were sort of just going for best player available. And I think Connect provides definitely more win now attributes than anybody we've picked in the last couple of years. But I do think it doesn't have to be viewed as that's the only reason that we picked him.
One thing I want to ask you is something that Alan is saying in the chat. Great to have you here, Alan. Obviously, trying to do what you can to spur Joe into getting him angry on this Thursday morning. But I do want to ask that Max Lewis and Max Christie are two players that play the same relative position to Dalton Knecht. Now, theoretically, you could play both, those guys together, as far as two of those three together at any one time, because they do play the wing positions, relatively same height, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to ask you this: when it comes to Max Christie and also as well, of course, Max Lewis, what are your thoughts on their future now that the team has picked and clearly set a direction with Dalton Knecht?
I don't think it means anything for them because I think that they're second round picks and you're just sort of hoping one of them pans out. Connect is very clearly like a different stratosphere of prospect than either of them have ever been. I don't view Christie as someone worth putting developmental resources into because I don't think that he's that valuable of a player. And I think that Lewis, I like him long term, but I have always seen him as someone that's going to take a good 2 years at least in the G League to really become a rotational player if he ever does. So I thought that he was always going to take time, and I don't think Connect being in the league should change that because I think Lewis should still be in the G League this year. So I don't think he should be taking any minutes from them. and I do think Connect is just a better player than Christie overall. So if it came down to one of them two having to be in the rotation, I would definitely prioritize Connect.
There you go. So it is again Stone Hansen. Just go ahead, check him out again at Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, and of course at report_court on Twitter. There were some other notes that you had on at report_court on Twitter about your thoughts on the NBA draft as a whole. It's not that you were so hard on Zachary Risache being picked by number one by the Atlanta Hawks. It's just that you would have gone in a different direction. Actually, you are a big Ron Holland supporter, and I see that depending on who you talk to, if you saw the guys such as yourself that put a lot of time into it, Ron Holland was up there as far as one of the top prospects in the draft, if not the top prospect in the draft. But yet some were still surprised he went number 5. Your overall thoughts on the upper tier of the draft and how it shaked itself out?
Yeah, I mean, I was still surprised he went at 5. I thought he would be going a lot lower than that. But
Even though
I think
he's your number one player.
correct. Yeah, I don't think NBA teams. I tend to have a lot different views than what NBA teams do. Um, I think that Holland is. I think Trajan Langford is a really smart player to have as the head of your organization, and he's so far made smart moves since joining the Pistons. And I think this is another one. The fit isn't great. I fully acknowledge that, but I think at this high in the draft, I always tend to prioritize best player available versus fit. When you get more into the Lakers range, you can start adjusting accordingly more for fit. But I think this high, you're leaving too much value on the table by trying to find someone that just fits the best for you. Free agency and trade still exist for them, so they can bring in shooting that they so desperately need. But just taking the best player available should have and seems to have been the priority for them. At 1, Risache would not have been my pick. Um, I don't know the ins and outs of there's a lot of, scuttlebutt around the Alex Sarr not wanting to work out for them. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I think very few people do, but I think that unless he explicitly told them that he does not want to be an Atlanta Hawk, I would have drafted him. And I think that Arisa Shea is still going to be a good player. He's not number one material in my eyes. Um, I think the worst pick of the entire draft was Tejan Salon at 6 to Charlotte. I thought that was a horrendous pick. Not someone I really even view as an NBA player, prospect really. And they took him extremely high as someone they're betting on upside with, and they've failed quite a bit doing that in the past with project players. I thought the Wizards pretty much did what they needed to at 2. That it was a good pick that fell right to them, and I thought that was pretty solid. And then at 3, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who went at 3.
3 went Reed Shepherd to
Reed
Houston.
Shepherd, yeah, and Reed I had a little bit lower than 3 on my board, but I do think that of any team that was picking that high, he fits the best for sure. And for the Rockets, again, that's not something I would prioritize that high. I would have gone a different way because I value best player available. But Reed is somebody that provides, in huge amounts what they need as shooting. And I would prioritize him as the starting shooting guard over Jalen Green long term.
Roy Estrada says, Laker fans, hold off on your opinions until you see Dalton Knecht on the court. A lot of you were raving about some of the picks last year, and all of them were a bust. Yeah, I wasn't raving about them, but Roy knows that. This is a wait and see and hope for the best. Again, new coaches in place. You've got Dalton Knecht there. Before we get back to the draft, I want to ask your thoughts on Dalton Knecht a little more in regards to what you would do to develop him the right way with the Lakers. I mean, new coach, new system, new assistant coaches coming in, new developmental plan. What would you make sure? Okay, it's obvious whatever steps they took with JHS and Maxwell Lewis last year weren't the right ones. Regardless of whether or not you thought they should be the picks or not. And Stone, you and I didn't think that JHS should have been the pick regardless, but it happened. It dealt with. But Let me ask you this. Obviously, whatever developmental plan for both of those guys didn't work out last year, or at least hasn't worked out yet so far. What would you do that's different in order to make sure Dalton Knecht has a good platform to succeed?
Well, my answer is probably going to change too as the roster changes, right? Because you're dealing with other players that are going to be on the court with him, and we don't know for sure who that will be in totality quite yet. But I do think that I would make him definitely more of an off-ball player. I think that that's just where he succeeds and is best at. And at his age, I don't see the handle really developing to a meaningful enough degree to be usable at this age. He'll be 24 by the end of his rookie season. I believe he's the oldest player in this draft. I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, I would just put him in a scoring role. And the other thing too is I wouldn't put the pressure on him to be like an integral part of the rotation in his rookie year, because rookies, I mean, like I've said a lot of times before, you get 5 or 6 rookies that are actually good NBA players their first year. Most of them are just bad while they're on the court. And I wouldn't put Connect in a position where you have to rely on him to be, a 10 plus point per game scorer each night for them. If he does that, great. I'm not saying you shouldn't hope for that, but I wouldn't try and expect that as an organization out of him early on into his career. I would hope that he does provide something and hopefully can crack the rotation, but I wouldn't be looking at him as like a top 4 scorer on the Lakers his rookie season, because at some point he might get there, but I just wouldn't try to put that pressure on him that early on.
Once again, it is Stone Hansen from @report_court on Twitter, plus also as well, of course, everything that he does as part of 1/3 of a great crew that knows what they're talking about with the NBA draft on the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. My friend, second round is today. Here we go. I call it the Bronny James Invitational today. So important, Bronny James in. They made a separate day just for him. No, I'm kidding out there, everyone. But I know some people that are you really that? No. We do know though that Bronny James is one of the players being considered by maybe at least more than one team than the Lakers, but I'm pretty sure. Sorry, Joe, for me to say this, despite my, I guess, misgivings. I do think he's going to be picked 55. He is your 52nd ranked prospect, so it does fit where the Lakers would pick him at 55. I just think the temptation by the Lakers to go ahead and pair him up with his dad would be just too much for them. I just think, though, that it's going to be even harder for the kid with dad right there literally all the time in El Segundo practicing with him, it's every single day. And almost like take your son to work day will become real. They'll be driving together to work. Hey, Dad, can't wait to go ahead and go out. Fill in your own vernaculars there. But I want to hear your thoughts on this with Bronny James first before we get into the possibilities for the second round. Bronny James, I think another team to watch out for is Indiana with 3 picks, although I think they'll have some type of action today. Your thoughts on Bronny James? And again, I know we talked about it before, but Bronny James most likely by the end of the day will be in the NBA with some team, most likely the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, again, numerically, he's 52 on my board. Not every class is the same. So, like last year, I had at 52 on my board, it still would have been a player that was, in my opinion, like a draftable range, draftable caliber player. This year at pick 52, it's more players I'd be looking at to invite to Summer League. So, just because Bronny is numerically there at 52, he is still someone I view more as like a Summer League invite versus somebody I'd give a 2-way contract to. That said, in this class, it's pick 55. I don't really care, to be honest, because I mean, odds are you're not getting anything out of pick 55, regardless of who you pick. There's players I like, certainly more than him, that will hopefully still be there. But I'm not, banking my hopes on pick 55 being any part of the Lakers core in the future. And if you look historically in the past 34 years, 2.06% of second rounders have ever become any sort of all-star. And I think only like 6 or 7% end up being rotational players. So it's a very small handful that you're talking about of players that actually are taken in the second round and become anything. Again, there's bets. I do a lot of research in the hopes that I can identify who those guys are, but um, the statistical odds are that you're not going to find that player at 55. There's definitely names I would prioritize over him, though.
One of the
And
things I want to, oh, go ahead. Go for it.
I'm not 100% sure that he's a lock to be a Laker. I think it's definitely a strong possibility, but I
Do you
still
think he
think
goes past 55? Do you think it becomes undrafted?
I think there's a team that could take him before us. I think there's equal
Okay.
odds of him going before or after us, because I think that if he were still on the board, well, at 55, the Lakers, I would bet money, have already talked to LeBron and Bronny about what they want to do in this situation. I'm sure they know exactly where they stand in all this. I don't think the rest of the league is probably privy to that information, but we don't know for sure if Bronny wants to be a Laker. In all this, we haven't really gotten clarification on that. Maybe he doesn't want to be in LeBron's shadow and he wants to be somewhere else. And they obviously have the pull to be able to cater to that. So we don't know for sure if Bronny wants to be a Laker. If he does, there's a decent chance they take him at 55. I would say they would take him if he does want to be there, and if LeBron wants him there. But I think that if he's taken beforehand, the way this class is viewed is largely as a weak draft, and that's amongst NBA front offices too. And if they think they can take a swing on somebody like Bronny, who, again, I have 52, there's varying opinions on every player. So where I have him at 52, another team might have him at pick 40. And if they're picking at pick 50 and he drops 10 spots, that's value on the board for them. So they might take him there. And, maybe another team might see it as, because this draft is so weak, why not take Bronny and see if you can shake things up with the Lakers, and maybe you have some sort of leverage point and can do something to pry LeBron out. Like, take your chances on a draft that they perceive as weak with no value still left. Why not take a chance on somebody that can really try and shake the organization up? So I think there's a couple different ways to look at it, and I'm not 100% locked in that he'll be a Laker, but I do think there's a decent chance it happens.
So with that said, and there's actually some activity right now going on. Minnesota is trading Wendell Moore Jr. and the number 37 pick in today's draft to Detroit. Detroit is at least sending Minnesota the number 53 pick, but we don't know. I'm sure there's more involved, but we don't know what exactly is involved entirely yet. So I would assume they're not just getting a worse pick out of it. I'm sure they're getting maybe a pick in alternate years or something like that. I'm sure there's more to it than what I'm just putting there in the chat right now. I do.
Maybe not actually, though, because last
Really?
night, this is a huge tax savings move by getting rid of somebody.
Good
When
point.
you're that far into the luxury tax, you're paying. If he's
They're
making only
rumored to
two.
be about $90 million in the tax after the two draft choices in the first round yesterday.
Yeah, and I don't think that's indicative of them willing to pay that much for the draft choices they made, because we still have a full summer for them to unload money. So I think this might be one of those moves where trading his $2 million contract actually saves them like 10 or 12 million in taxes. So and to do that favor, the cost is dropping 15 spots for the ability to do that. So I think this might actually be the entire trade.
That's a good point. Absolutely. There you go. Very astute right there. Caught it, and appreciate you doing that. It is Stone Hansen, Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, and also at report_court on Twitter. I want to ask you this, Stone. It is the second round of the draft. There are still several notable names available in this second round draft. Kyle Filipowski's name is one of them. You mentioned Crawford, who is your highest ranked player on your draft board still available. Some of the interesting matchups. What do you have in mind, or what are you thinking is going to take place in the early parts of the second round?
Uh, I have no clue because I didn't even know what was going to happen in the first parts of the first round last night. It's a very wide
Mhm.
open draft, so guys like Filipowski, I did not expect to drop there. I expected Crawford to still be there because I again differ much from NBA opinions, but I thought my perception was NBA front offices liked Filipowski more than I did, and that has
Mhm.
not been the case. So I think he'd probably be a good bet to be taken in the first 10 picks or so. Um, and yeah, I don't know where other guys are going to go. There's Tyler Smith is another name I did not expect to drop past the
You got
first round.
Jonathan Magabo at your 20, or Mogbo
Yeah,
22nd, Kevin McCullough, Nikola Jurisic at 18th is on your draft board. Kyle Filipowski, Jalen Wells is another name you also had on the list as well at number 16.
yeah, and I from what I have heard, would not expect the Lakers to target a big at 55. And the Lakers could still move into the second round too. We don't know for sure if they will or not. And maybe they decide not to. But for me, there's players such as Crawford or Wells that I would move up. Maybe you attach a future second and move up from 55 to move up 10 spots or something to try and target somebody like Wells or Crawford. Um, I would not bet on the Lakers taking a big if they move back into there, or if at 55 Bronny's gone or whatever the case may be. Um, I think they would target a guard or a wing above a big from my perception. Not to say it can't happen. Things change very quickly. A lot of things changed last night from what I had heard that were unexpected, but um, I wouldn't expect them to take a big. And because of that, my top priority guys would be Isaiah Crawford and Jalen Wells. And the Lakers have done pretty well in undrafted free agency, so maybe they get one of them there too.
One of the things I want to ask you about is, of course, the biggest name in this list that's still available is Kyle Filipowski. Is it a possibility that the Lakers might make a play to move up in the draft to see if they can go ahead and get him?
Again, from what I had heard, I think the Lakers are avoiding taking the big in this draft.
Okay.
Um, I I wouldn't be opposed to them doing it, but I would be surprised if they did it. I don't. It's not impossible. They could, but I would be surprised if they moved up for Filipowski or took any big that fell to them at 55.
Okay. All right. But do you see them moving up into the draft at all to go after a player?
That I have no idea. Maybe, maybe not. I didn't expect them to with Christie. I didn't see that coming.
Okay.
So I've been blindsided before.
And they actually moved up to get Maxwell Lewis, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe they bought the Christie pick and then they moved up from where they were
Yes.
to get Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year, who knows? I never really have a good grasp for what they're going to do in the second round, to be honest. So we'll see. That's, I guess, part of the fun of it. For people that are really into the draft, most people probably don't care what happens in the second round, but
It seems to be now more important than ever because, again, they're going to do it on a separate day. So we'll find out what's going on and we'll be here for it starting at 1 p.m. Hopefully, you'll join us for that. But before we head on out, my friend, a little bit more on Dalton Knecht and how he'll fit in the offense. I noticed some analysts out there are already talking about him being one of the major contributors out there simply because of the fact that they feel he's a more ready now player. You're a little bit hesitant on committing to him being that ready now player that's going to give you a major contribution right away. But you're still very positive on the pick itself. I want to make sure and clarify that.
yeah, for sure. I'm hopeful he can be someone that, is like getting 8, 10 plus points in his rookie year. And that doesn't sound super impressive, but for most rookies, I think that's a totally fine thing to ask of them. And, in the future, hopefully he does more than that. But um I just am again, most rookies just suck. That's just the honest truth of it. Is most rookies suck their first year, um, and I wouldn't want to be relying upon a rookie to be an integral part of like my starting five or something. Hopefully he can be at some point in this year. I'm not ruling that out, but I just wouldn't bet on that or put that pressure on him as a rookie. I do think that he is a player that is more well suited to be a contributor early on than a lot of players, and he happens to fit that. But for people that maybe don't watch the draft as often, I don't think that older player immediately equates to NBA ready. Just
Mhm.
like I don't think younger player immediately equates to needing more time to develop. So I want to make that clear. But Connect does happen to fit into the fact that he is old and has a game that is more ready to go and hit the ground running. So I just want to make that clear for the future. But I do think that Connect is somebody that can help early on. I just wouldn't pin major contributions on a rookie like that.
And so, where do you see Dalton Knecht? Let's say 2, 3 years down the line. Do you see him by then making a good contribution to the team, a major contribution to the Lakers rotation?
I would hope so. I think that he's again like a solid scorer. I think he's someone that has the potential if things go right. And again, the way I sort of analyze the draft is with lower, median, and high end outcomes, dependent on how certain things develop. And it's really hard to predict the outcomes and the attainability of those things. But I think that he is someone that, in his 60 to 80th percentile outcomes can be like a 10 to 15 point per game scorer. And then, if he's really hits as someone that's scoring, 18 to 22 points a game. And it's just, a bona fide score. So hopefully that's the outcome that we see out of him. Um, and we get that. But I just wouldn't expect that from year one.
Okay, fair enough. But is Stone Hansen? I want to ask you this though, when it comes to the guys of the Upside Swings podcast, you guys were all probably texting each other and messaging each other during the course of the draft. What's the one pick that had all three you guys going just like crazy about in the draft? There must have been at least one pick that got you, all three of you guys just like, I can't believe they did that. That was just like ridiculous, or that was such a great pick. What was the one pick that seemed to get all three of you guys up in arms?
Yeah, so it is a little different because this is not meant to sound like some sort of flex or anything or insider knowledge, but some of us know some people that we get the picks before they're announced on Twitter, even, and so we have like a some sort of knowledge of what's coming down the pipeline. But one that really I think blindsided us, and that's not to say for every pick either. That's only like some picks, but uh, I think that we were pretty surprised by the fact that um, Holland went that high. I don't think any of us expected that. I'm not really sure anybody expected that anywhere, and it was very surprising to see Collier drop to where he did. I did not think that was going to happen. I thought he would go. I had him 3. I never expected him to go at 3. I thought he'd be someone that is probably in the 15 to 20 range. I did not think he'd be picked at 29. But I did not see that coming either. And again, we didn't see guys going as dropping as far as they did, like Filipowski. I thought Furphy would be gone by now. But I guess the first pick that really surprised us was with Ron Holland.
That's true. So with that said, though, kind of makes you feel good though, because you had him really high up in the draft. He is your number one prospect. At one time, he was number one on almost all the draft boards. Then he fell. Isaiah Collier, same thing. But it has to get some type of retribution to analysts such as yourself to see Ron Holland being thought of by an NBA team similar to what you and other analysts have thought about Ron Holland?
Yeah, definitely. And especially when it's somebody that is smart, I think, like Langdon is. Like I think Langdon sees the game in a really smart way. And for somebody to, I guess, sort of validate the way I viewed Holland is encouraging. And at other times, it is at times somewhat discouraging when guys like Collier, who I really like, is falling. But there's reasons that I can't factor in that I don't know ahead of time, such as workouts, interviews, how teams are perceiving guys like that, what feedback they get from their coaches, family, whatever. I don't have insight into that, and that plays a big factor into where guys go. But I am unable to put that into my evaluation. So as much as I watch guys and study guys on the court, and I hope to some degree I have a decent feel of that, it's still a big missing factor of what I do is, um, what they do off the court, and that's things only NBA teams have access to.
So I want to ask you this, my friend. Okay, let's say Bronny James. I know Roy had a scenario where the Celtics, who have the pick, quite coincidentally, right before the Lakers, just as a jab to the Lakers, pick him at 54. Let's say the Lakers don't have Bronny James there, so they don't have the burden of going ahead and selecting him. Your thoughts on where would you go with the number 55 pick on based on the players that you think will be available in and around that area?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would prioritize Crawford and Wells, or that they're
If they
Crawford is
fall that far.
if they fall that far. And I kind of expect Crawford to. I think Crawford might be an undrafted guy. Wells, I think, might be picked before they get there. But I would pick either of those guys because I think Crawford um, is just a really all around player who plays two ways, can shoot, play make defensively. I think he's just an NBA rotation player. And to get that, I think is really good value that far down. Um, Wells is more of a shooting and defensive bet. He doesn't do as much with the ball in his hands, but he's a really good shooter and a really solid defender. And those two things make for a valuable NBA player. Um, so I would prioritize those two guys. But there's things at play that prevent other things from happening. I have trouble trying to come up with how to word things perfectly here, but the, sometimes NBA teams pull strings and favors so that a guy can hear his name called, and then they actually get the player they want in undrafted free agency. Um, so even if the
I.e.,
guy's
Austin Reeves, for instance.
correct, and yeah, and there's guys that even if they don't get picked at 55, I'm hopeful that will be signed in undrafted free agency. So we'll see what happens at 55 and at that part in the draft too. Once you get past 45, from what I know, and this is no secret to anybody really, um, is when favors start to come into play heavily for teams. If they have a they have a good relationship with an agent or agency, um, and most of the guys or all the guys that they view as in a certain tier of player are gone off their board. Uh, they'll move a guy up and draft them so that they can continue that relationship with an agency or agent for things in the future. So sometimes guys go undrafted too because they want a choice of where they get to go and sign rather than being picked to to a team that they don't have any say over. So some guys will request teams not to draft them once they get past a certain point because they would rather be able to decide where they live and what team they play for versus hearing their name called on draft night. So there's different things that come into play, and I wouldn't be if you have somebody that you really like. I wouldn't be too discouraged that they're not picked at 55 because there's still a chance in undrafted free agency.
So, with that said, it is, of course, Stone Hansen right here. Stone Hansen from the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. Also, as well, of course, @report_court on Twitter. Stone, always great to have you here, my friend. You're welcome to drop on by later on today for the second round if you want. But I know you and the guys at Upside Swings are probably planning some scenario after the draft or what you guys got cooking up at Upside Swings. And of course, everybody, please keep continuing to follow at report_court on Twitter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, if anybody watching has questions or doesn't know much about a player, you can listen to any podcast we've probably done on them over the course of this season. That we'll spend a good 30-40 minutes dissecting a single player. Um, and for the future, we might do a podcast here or there, but typically right after the draft, we actually will take like a extended period of a break. We'll take a breather and before we get into 2025. So you might not hear from Upside Swings for a little bit, or from me for a little bit, because we'll take probably a little bit of a break. But if the stuff is still up about players that have been drafted, so if you have more questions on them, you can check that out. And I'll still probably tweet here and there, so you can check me out at report_court.
R. Bruin says, thank you. Best channel to learn more about the draft and the players in the draft. And a lot of that has to do with Stone Hansen. Stone Hansen, please go ahead and follow him today at report_court on Twitter. And of course, when they do put out episodes, no better place to go to learn about the NBA draft outside of the Lakers Fast Break. Well, actually, including the Lakers Fast Break. For everything on the NBA draft, you need to hit up the Upside Swings NBA Draft podcast, my friend. Just absolutely fantastic to have you here. Any last thoughts, my friend, before we head on out?
I'll probably join you guys at some point for this second round. But
I have a feeling it's just going to be me hanging out, although Legend, some of my East Coast guys may stop by, but I have a feeling I'm going to be hanging out with the chat all by myself and all by my lonesome. But yeah,
I'll try and get in then at some point. Definitely just send me the link whenever. I might not be here right when it starts, but at some point during the second round, I'll pop in.
I just have a feeling the during the day type deal. I think they're probably also because they want to do it during the day to avoid the presidential debate. But this is a feeling out process about the second day. Yeah,
it wasn't supposed to be this early, from what I know, and
it's the debate.
The debate was set after, so they had to change the time.
Yeah,
but I do not like this 2-day thing. I would rather.
Do you think they'll stick to it? Do you think they'll stick to it?
They have a history of trying, at the very least, trying things out for a few years. So I think at the least it'll happen for the next year or two, and they'll do a trial run with it. Silver doesn't like to do things with 1-year sample sizes. So I think it'll be here for a couple more years, but I'm hoping in the long term it goes back to 1 day.
It's just the reason why I say this, and I've said this on the show before, is because they've never treated the second round with any respect. If you watch the television, or at least ESPN and whoever's covering the draft has not treated the second round with any respect. I mean, you and I, when we watch the second round in previous drafts, it's always been like just going on a ticker. And mostly it's about 90% of it's just interviews with the draftees from the first round or other analysts talking about stuff, maybe a little bit here and there about some of what's going on in the second round, but they're always like, when they fill you in, they're doing it like 7 or 8 draft choices at one time. And it just doesn't seem like they're giving the second round draft choice much of a thought. Now, mind you, the statistics bear out that the second round players, most of these guys picked today, will probably never develop into real rotation NBA players. I get that. So that's why should you spend so much time? But it seems like the NBA is trying to do something different for the second round to shine light. But the thing is, why should people care? Why should the audience care about the second round being broadcasted in its own light today?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I care because this is what I do. And, unless you're sort of in this level of draft weeds, most people are not going to care to the degree that I do. I think that it's very I think that it's just weird to do it 2 days because you're probably getting more viewership, honestly, by people having their TV staying on after the first round than you will have from people making effort out of their day to tune in a second time. And I think that there's talent. There's always talent to be had. There's always going to be a couple players in the second round and in free undrafted free agency that become NBA players that are, you know, good players. And there's examples that you can go through and look at. I'm not going to name them all, but uh, there's always those players. It's just a matter of identifying who they are and what teams that will get the most out of them. So for that reason, I would tune in. But if you're somebody that is more of a casual draft watcher, and not everyone has the time, I completely understand that as well. So, yeah, I don't anticipate the viewership is going to be very high today, but we will see, I guess.
But we'll be here, or I'll be here, and Stone hopefully will join me along the way. It is the second round of the NBA draft. It'll be starting around 1 p.m. Pacific, and I'll be here for that. But Stone, you wanted to come on early to talk about Dalton Knecht, and I truly cannot thank you enough. And my gosh, man, we're finally happy about a Lakers draft choice after a couple years of I don't know if it's going to work out. And hasn't worked out so far well for the Lakers the past couple of years, but hopefully now they're on the right track.
Yeah, and I like Connect. I'm happy about the Connect pick. I want to caution people that it's not a home run sort of, it's not the sort of pick that we can look back in 3 years and be like, wow, the Lakers got the best player in this class at pick 17. Like, he's not that level of prospect. It's not like a Jalen Williams taken at 12 by the Thunder. He's not that level of player, but he is a player that I think can be a really good rotation player and hopefully a really good starter long term. And I'm happy about the pick, and I'm very happy that they did not pick somebody that I thought would be equal or worse to JHS as a prospect. So I think that the Lakers picked well. But I want to caution people that they're not getting like a franchise cornerstone type player at pick 17 here with Connect. But I do think he is a good player.
Before we go, Pale Fox is asking, and also Corbina says, Stone, I like Stone's insight. Pale Fox is asking, is there a Ben Wallace in the undrafted type ranks?
Well, that's probably the best undrafted player ever. So I don't know about that. But I mean, the player I keep coming back to that I think can be a valuable NBA player would be Isaiah Crawford. Whether NBA teams give him that same opportunity that I think he's deserving of, I don't know. But if there are to be a player that is, a solid NBA contributor, that is who I would put my money on.
Fair enough. And if he gets the opportunity as an undrafted player, who knows? The Lakers may be the beneficiary, the beneficiary of such a undrafted. I mean, they've already struck gold with Austin Reeves as undrafted players, so who knows what will happen here.
Breaking news, not that it's that important, but Golden State trades 52 to OKC for Lindy Waters, which, if anyone's tuning in, I guess, to the second round, I would imagine that 52nd pick is going to be added to more picks, and Presti is going to try and get back into this second round. And I would imagine that he's targeting Filipowski, but we'll see. That's just a prediction.
Could he be targeting Bronny James?
If I am an NBA team, I would draft Bronny James past pick 40 really in this class, because I don't view this class as very valuable past pick 35 really. And I would do it because you have the chance to, again, I don't want this to happen, but you have the chance to bring out to give LeBron more to think about and possibly shake up, one of your opponent's organizations. I would do it if I am a different team. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying they should do it because I think Bronny's a great player. But if I am a different team strategically, I think it's a worthwhile move. but I would not draft Bronny for the sake of trying to trade him for a trade asset from the Lakers, because I think that's bad relationship management, and that's really important in the NBA because teams build on relationships to make deals in the future with each other, and by burning bridges like that, I think that's dumb to do. But I wouldn't hold Bronny hostage by doing that, but I would if he wants to go to LA, especially. But if he doesn't have a preference of where he goes, and I'm another team, I would try and draft Bronny James to shake things up.
I just want the Lakers to not draft Bronny, but I know that Bronny probably, if he's there at 55, will be odds-on favorite to be there. And of course, Joe will be no longer, according to what he says, as far as not watching the Lakers. So hopefully that won't happen because I would like to keep Joe around if that's the case. But we'll see what happens as it plays out in the second round. It is, of course, the Lakers Fast Break. Stone, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts today on Dalton Knecht. It is Stone Hansen. So please go ahead and support him at report_court on Twitter. And of course, also as well, the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. Pale, I don't know what you're saying about trying to murder Joe with words. I don't want to murder anyone particularly. So, I'm not really interested in murdering people. So, but again, I would like to keep Joe around. That is my intent. But again, he has stated that he will probably stop watching. Can't believe he'll stop watching Lakers basketball. Do you, Joe? Do you, Stone? Do you think Joe will stop watching Lakers basketball? He says he will.
If he's a man of his word, Joe Sora will no longer be watching or supporting the Lakers, but we will see. I hope that's not the case.
I hope it's not the case. Just over Bronny James, but I don't know. I don't know if Joe's bluffing, Pale Fox, but okay. Again, I would hope that's not the case.
So. If Bronny James to the Lakers is the biggest issue with nepotism that you have in this organization, I think Joe has severely overlooked a different part of the organization. I would be more inclined to not watch the Lakers because of a different nepotism baby than Bronny, but that is just my opinion.
Would you rename the Lakers the Nepo babies?
The Los Angeles Nepos?
Yes.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think I'd want to support a team named that, but
okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
We'd have to be the Nepo Fast Break or something like that. So yeah, that would not go too well. But once again, it is Stone Hansen at report_court on Twitter, and of course the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. Well, Stone, I will be back in a couple hours. Hopefully you'll be able to join me at some point in time with your analysis. Looking forward to everyone out there being a part of what we're doing. And if you've not yet liked and subscribed, please do so to get the latest notifications on when we go live right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.